Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Steven Universe Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episodes 121 and 122 of Steven Universe, Room for Ruby and Lion 4, Alternate Ending, and well, let's talk about Room for Ruby first, and as the title of this episode implies, one of the Rubies comes back, specifically Navy. Basically, what's going on is that the episode actually opens with Steven and Garnet just kind of sitting out in front of Steven's house, just watching shooting stars and making wishes. But as they're doing this, one particular shooting star seems to be flying towards the Earth and crashes right in front, right there on the beach. When Steven and Garnet go to investigate, that's when they find the Navy. That's when they find the Navy Ruby, who apparently just seemed to crash down to Earth as just kind of an accident. Of course, the instant she sees Steven and Garnet, she leaps at them, which causes Steven to throw up a bubble and block her. But instead of immediately cursing the pair out for all the crap that they did to the Rubies, well, Navy actually starts begging them to let her stay. Because, yeah, just to clarify, Navy was the member of the Rubies who was the nice one, who seems... Hold on a second. Sorry about that, the mailman drove by. But anyway, yeah, like I said, Navy was the nice Ruby in the group, and she says that she apparently does not want to go back with the Rubies because apparently all of them were mean to her, and she wants to stay on Earth with the crystal gems. Of course, Steven is kind of shocked to hear this, especially since every single one of the past interactions that the gems have had with Navy and the Rubies, it's usually ended with the Rubies getting conned. They were tricked into playing a game. They managed to trick her with a Jasper fake. They sent them to Neptune, and then they sent them into space and stole their ship. But every single time, Navy's all like, "Well, it's okay. I understand. We were all fighting. I thought that was fun. The game was good. I understand completely. I just want to stay here and be friends with you guys." And well, it does kind of surprise Steven and Garnet. Steven's actually all for giving her a chance to want to help, though Garnet admittedly is also suspect, though it's partially because she can't really differentiate the Rubies for whatever reason. But either way, Steven does manage to convince Garnet to let Navy get a shot, especially when he cites Garnet's own history with Ruby, and so Garnet decides to give Steven a shot to reform Navy, and so, sure enough, Steven says that he knows the perfect place for Navy to stay, and that place is the barn, with Peridot and Lapis. And so, Steven and Navy end up going to the barn, and Steven, of course, introduces Navy to the pair. And, well, he states that, of course, he gives them the whole spiel. Navy wants to stay on Earth, she wants to be a part of our team now, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. And basically, well, Lapis is kind of suspect of this too, especially since, like Steven cited, every single interaction that the Crystal Gems have had with Navy and Co. has been negative. So, basically, Lapis does not understand why she would want to be their friend, which honestly makes sense for Lapis because, well, she and Peridot are former bad guys, and for the longest time, there was no love lost between them or the Crystal Gems, and it took them time to start building that up, and even then, the only reason that they built that eventual rapport was because of Steven, since he was the nice guy that they actually did like hanging out with, and since the Gems were his friends, they started putting up with them, and then they actually started building friendships from that. It was a similar case of Peridot and Lapis, since Lapis was held prisoner by Peridot the first time they encountered each other, and then when Lapis saw Peridot again, except when Peridot was now on the side of the good guys, she wanted nothing to do with her until Steven vouched for her. So, again, she understands that she knows how someone that would be in Navy's position would act, and yet Navy is just all too friendly and wants to be a part of everything. However, Peridot and Steven do manage to talk Lapis down and say, maybe she really does want to change. Maybe we should give her a shot. There's a lot of weird, strange things on Earth that took us a while to understand, and maybe we could give her some pointers and help her out. And so, Lapis, for the sake of Steven and Peridot, does concede to it, and so Lapis and Peridot do start trying to teach Navy about how the Earth works, about how things grow here, about how they get light from the sun, how it rains, and so on and so forth. But Navy is just like picking it all up like that. Even though for Gems, all this shit ain't normal. On Homeworld it doesn't rain. On Homeworld they don't have a sun. Don't know how they keep their planet warm, but hey, they're rock people. What do I care? And then of course, On top of that, they don't grow things. They don't sleep. Basically, all these things that are foreign to gems and even took Lapis and Peridot time to try and figure out, well, Navy's just getting it all on the first try. She sees Rain's like, I love rain! I love the sun! I love sleeping! I love growing things! I love the dirt! I love you guys! And basically, Lapis Lapis keeps seeing this. Her fuse keeps getting shorter and shorter because she just thinks this is bullshit, pretty much. And so eventually when Steven and Peridot are showing Navy the corn that Lapis and Peridot grew, she finally just said, when she finally just tries testing and say, well, what do you think about pumpkin? What do you think about dirt? What do you think about us? And she gives the affirmation, I love you guys thing. Lapis finally just says, oh, come on, before she just flies back to the barn. As such, Steven and Peridot get worried and go back to the barn to check on Lapis, and yeah, she's in her little hidey hole, which is the truck that was thrown into the which was stuck into the hole of the barn, where I'm guessing Lapis likes to just kind of hang out during the day. And basically, she's just kind of wondering what's going on. Maybe is something wrong with her specifically, or is she? When I say her, Lapis is talking about herself. Like, Lapis is wondering if anything was wrong with her specifically, or if something's up with Ruby, because it took Lapis a while to understand what was going on, or to understand how Earth operated, and even now she still doesn't fully comprehend it. So why is Navy getting able to pick all this up so easily? And so Peridot just tries to tell her maybe it's just a learning curve, people learn at different paces and learn at different speeds than others, and basically just tell her it's okay to feel this way, but likewise it's fine to still be kind of struggling, so to speak. However, as they're talking, Navy comes up, and when she hears that Lapis is distressed, she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, I can just go if you want. And Lapis is like, no, it's fine, it's just me. And they say that Navy can still stay, which she's overjoyed with, especially since she has nowhere to go. The ship was literally the only home that she ever had, even though earlier she said that the Rubies all made fun of her. So, basically, However, she says she'd love to see the ship one last time, I think. I don't know. I could be making that up. The point is, she did mention the ship, and Steven tells Navy, oh, we have your ship. And so Navy's like, really? And they actually do point it out, and yeah, the ship is just like parked right in front of the barn with decorations all around it. And so Steven asks if Navy would love to fly around the ship and show them how it works, which Navy obliges. And so the next scene, Steven, Lapis, Peridot, and Pumpkin, because Pumpkin was in this entire episode, and Navy are flying around in the Ruby ship with Navy in the pilot's seat. And so basically it all seems fine. They all think, oh good, the Crystal Gems have a pilot now, it's all nice and good, and Lapis is still clearly nervous, but trying to be more accepting. But as they're going, Navy directs Steven to a button that's near the back of the ship and tells Steven that she wants him to go press it, because if he does, something cool will happen. So Steven obliges and goes over to press the button, but the instant he does, suddenly a tube ends up flying over the captain's chair, just kind of cutting off Navy from the rest of the ship. And the back of the ship opens, which causes Lapis, Peridot, Pumpkin, and Steven to end up getting thrown out and just holding onto the ship for dear life as it's flying around. As such, immediately Steven thinks it was a mistake and says that, and asks Navy, hey, I think something's up with the ship. But Navy's response is, yeah, there is something wrong with the ship. You're still on it. Yep, this was a long con. It turns out that Navy is not turning traitor. It actually does not want to stay on Earth. Basically, this was just one big scam in order for her to get to the ship, which even Steven is like, then why didn't you just steal the ship? You could, if this thing is what you were after, then why go through all of that with the whole I want to be on Earth thing? And basically it's because Navy's a bitch. Yeah, Navy did literally all that, built up all that trust with Steven and co. just because she wanted to see the look on their faces when she eventually betrayed them. That's a dick move, that's a dick move, my friend. That's a dick move. And basically, when Lance and Lapis hears that's what her... Hold on a second again. Sorry, I was looking at Xander. Basically, the instant that Lapis learns that was Navy's modus operandi, she's just effing mad as she just starts crawling over Steven and Peridot to get back on the ship and essentially throttle Navy. And the instant Navy realizes that that's what she wants to do, she immediately panics and then immediately throws the ship around so much that they get thrown into the ocean before she flies off into space. Now, while at first Steven thinks that maybe they could go after her, Lapis instead just starts laughing as she's floating in the ocean because guess what? She was right! There was something up with Navy. No gem could be that well adjusted, so she was right. And I kind of love that she is just so, that her happiness at being right here trumps any anger that she feels about being betrayed. I find that great. And even as the trio plus Pumpkin make their way out of the ocean, Lapis is still laughing at the fact that she got it right. Although once they get out of the ocean, they run into Garnet, who apparently went to go get balloons to essentially celebrate either outcome. One is it's like welcome to the party. The other is sorry for your loss. And well, when she realizes that everything with Navy went south, she just pops the sorry for your loss balloon and even says, at least it was worth a try, as they both look up to the sky, and the episode ends with an image of Navy just winking at them. So that was a thing. But now we get to Lion 4, Alternate Ending, and this one focuses on Steven as he's trying to, once again, piece together his magical destiny, so to speak. And basically, how he's attempting to do it is by looking at the video that his mom left for him, and basically, Steven believes that hidden within the video are little clues that are supposed to hint at whatever he is supposed to do, but ultimately, every lead that Steven goes for is a dead end. He tried rearranging the letters of the first word of every sentence. He tried looking at her from different angles. He tried digging deeper into her words, but basically, Steven finds nothing, and basically the more Steven digs, the more frustrated he gets, to the point where he's just wondering, why am I even here? Why do I exist? What is my purpose in all this? Why did she even have me? And basically, while Steven's doing all this, Lion is there too, as Steven is analyzing the video in his bedroom, so to speak, and Lion's just kind of on the bed doing cat things, so to speak. But in the spirit of cat things, Lion starts looking like he's about to cough up a hairball, which at first, when Steven sees this, he starts freaking out and tries to tell him, no, don't cough it up, at least do it on the floor, before he hears a clack. And Steven just immediately sighs in disappointment as he realizes he has to clean up a mess. Only this mess is actually something he finds beneficial, as it turns out the hairball that Lion coughed up was a pink metal key with Rose's symbol on it, which immediately, when Steven sees this, he thinks, this must be a clue to magical destiny, before Lion pukes up something else that he ate onto Steven's sheets. As such, after Steven washes the sheets, he immediately thinks that this key must be something that his mom left for him, so that she could lead him to a destiny, that it must be here for this specific time, and that Lion gave it to him just for some big, magical, whatever purpose. Hold on a second. Sorry about that dog-related shenanigans. But yeah, with the key in hand, Steven begins wondering if this is the literal key to his magical destiny. The only problem is, he can't find anything the key is for. He at first tries taking it to the chest in Lion's mane, but the key is too big for the lock. Then he tries going to places that Rose would realistically use the key, like her fountain, which he dips the key in the water and nothing happens. He then even goes to Rose's room and says, hey, I'd like something that this key can unlock, and it just gives him a lock to unlock, which leads to literally nothing. As such, Steven eventually thinks, maybe I can turn this key on myself, and then just smacks himself in the face and nothing happens. As such, Steven begins to realize that maybe the key is for something that he hasn't seen before, and so he asks Lion to take him somewhere new. While Lion is his typical stoic self, eventually Steven's begging does get Lion to concede, and so Lion ends up taking Steven back to the desert where he and the gems first found Lion. As such, Lion ends up leading Steven through the desert, and they spend hours running, which even Steven's like, are we almost there? But eventually they do manage to reach the destination and find the door that the key unlocks. Essentially, it looks like that what they're seeing is the remains of a gem building, and basically these remains are housed between these two pink pyramids, so to speak. They'll be important later, trust me. And basically, the instant Steven sees the door, and after he hydrates, he goes over to it, and yep, the key is a perfect fit. So he opens the door, and he hopes that whatever is behind it will be whatever he's looking for, whatever will lead him to his destiny. Inside is literally a junk shop. Like I said, this is just the remains of a building, and the only thing that's even left of this place is the door. The rest, anything behind it, just leads to more desert, and just essentially piles upon piles of junk. Basically, this place was where Rose threw all of her garbage. So, yeah, there is nothing here, and Steven is basically just outraged that he went through all that shit to try and figure out what his purpose is, only to end up in with Rose's garbage, which, Yeah, probably not good for Steven's self-esteem because he found himself there. But in Steven's rage, he ends up picking up a helmet and just throws it into the distance, but underneath his helmet, he finds a videotape, which is very similar to the videotape that his mother left for him. And when he picks it up, on it are the words "for Nora" written in his mother's handwriting. But Stevens are kind of curious. Why would his mom make another video? Does Steven have a sister? Who is Nora? So basically, with more questions in Steven's head, he immediately goes back to Lion and asks for help. And while Lion is now less willing to help Steven because, well, he's been pulled all over the place, Steven manages to convince Lion to help him one last time by promising to not get mad the next time he throws up on his bed. Which I love how Lion reacts to it. Like at first, the whole time he's just looking angry and not even trying to look Steven in the eye. But then the instant Steven throws out the "I won't get mad at you next time you throw on the bed," his eyes just go wide. Like, yep, that's what he needed. So basically, Lion ends up warping Steven to another location, and this one is back in Beach City, specifically near a cliff. And so when Steven goes to investigate said cliff, he finds the person that Lion brought him to. His dad, who's sitting on the cliff just tuning his guitar, just playing guitar. And so once Greg sees Steven, he's all happy to see him and asks what he's doing. And so Steven explains about his whole journey to try and find his purpose and how it led him to the videotape for Nora. And Greg actually immediately recognizes the tape, and so he says that he says that Steven should probably see it too, and puts it in, and well, the tape is almost exactly like the one that Rose left for Steven. It's not note the same. It's clear that some of the scenes from Steven's tape were extensions of scenes from this tape, as there clearly is a cutoff, and you can see where one scene was edited. How one video had some edited scenes while this video had other edited scenes, so it's clear. So they're clearly made on the same day, but ultimately, yeah, this video is essentially the exact same one that Steven got again, and except instead of Rose making it for Steven, she made it for someone named Nora, and she's again saying the exact same things to Nora as she is to Steven, that they can't both exist at the same time, that she's going to become a part of her, and so on and so forth. And basically, while watching this does cause Greg to tear up because, well, he's seeing Rose again. Basically, Steven just pauses the video and, of course, thinks this doesn't answer anything. So who the hell is Nora? What does that to feed into? And Greg responds, Steven, Nora is you. Which causes Steven to freak out a little as he thinks, wait, so I'm my mom and my sister? But Greg says, no, Nora is who would have been Steven's name if he was born a girl. Yeah, it turns out that when Rose and Greg when Rose was pregnant with Steven, well, she and Greg never knew if Steven was going to be a boy or a girl. So basically, they just chose two names for him. Basically, if Steven was born a girl, they would have named her Nora. But if Steven was born a boy, then his name would be Steven. And well, since the show is called Steven Universe, you can obviously tell which one it was. So basically, this is literally just an alternate video that Rose made in case she had a daughter instead of a son. And so basically, Steven just kind of freaked out about this, and he's wondering, well, this still doesn't explain anything. But ultimately, Greg just kind of lays it out for Steven. They didn't know what Steven was going to be. They didn't know who Steven was going to be. They had no idea. Even Garnet's future vision wasn't going to tell them that. But ultimately, that's ultimately part of the reason why Rose even had Steven at all, because she wanted him to explore it. She wanted Steven to find that identity, and as he gets older and learns more about himself, he'll find that identity. He'll become that person. He'll grow into that person, and that's ultimately what Rose wanted for Steven. Not some big magical destiny, just to be her kid. And sure enough, it's confirmed in the video as when Steven starts it up. It turns out there was a little added extra to the end of the video, with Rose just talking about how humans are complex and how ultimately how they may be looking to Nora, but Nora is just how Nora ultimately can grow into whoever she wants to be. That's the joy of being a human. That it's this thing that you can find all yourself, and what Nora will become is someone incredible. She'll be herself, and how Rose wishes that she could see her, how she wishes that she knows that anybody that meets her will feel lucky to even be there, which, again, knowing that Nora is Steven, she's saying all these things to her kid. Just saying, I wish I could. I know you're gonna grow up into something unique and interesting that everyone you meet is gonna be so lucky to know you. And I wish I could. And I wish I could see it. It's honestly touching. It's actually really touching. And while the name may be different, it's clearly Steven that she's talking to. And so when the video ends, Steven's like, "So that's it? I'm just supposed to be your kid?" We see Steven turn and look to his dad, and he's got tears in his eyes, and you can tell a huge weight has been lifted off of his shoulders, and he says, "I can live with that." It's honestly really sweet, and that's how the episode ends. So, okay, so thoughts on the episodes. First, Room for Ruby. I don't know if this episode really has a central theme to it or a moral, so to speak. If at best, the only moral that I could scrounge out of this episode was just sometimes you should trust your gut, and it kind of goes along similar themes that we've seen in other similar. It goes across, it has similar themes that we kind of saw in Rocknaldo. It's okay to be accepting and forgiving, but some people just aren't worth it. And we see that with Navy in this episode. Basically, throughout the whole episode, knowing in advance that Navy was going to betray the group, was going to betray Steven and Co., her attitude feels very off. Even if you don't know the twist, Lapis's suspicion is very valid, because, well, like Lapis and Steven said at different points in the episode, every single interaction that the rubies and the crystal gems have had has been negative and has led to the rubies getting humiliated and beaten at every turn, which I think is part of the reason why Navy even set up this whole charade, because she just wanted to get a win over the gems, and she wanted to see their faces when she got that win, because, again, every single time that they've confronted, the gems have tricked and conned the rubies. So I get that. So I can actually kind of understand Navy's logic with going through this whole charade. It wasn't just to get the ship back. She just wanted to get one up on them. But throughout the episode, there is still that sense that something is not right. And in a way, you're kind of on board with Lapis here, because Navy seems way too accepting of all the things on Earth. Again, these are things that are normal for us as humans, but the Gem Society operates on a very different scale than what we're used to. Things that are normal for us are abnormal for them, and then likewise, things that are normal for them can be abnormal to us. So having to take someone from a completely different culture, society, ecosystem, and planet of all things, and then place them on Earth, where everything is basically flipped on its head from her perspective. Of course, basically, she should be confused and wonder what the hell's going on. And Lapis, what I like here is that Lapis acts as the realist in this episode. She's been through what Navy is going through. She's adjusting to this new world and trying to figure out her place in it. And even now, while she's okay with living on Earth, there are still things about it that weird her out. And ultimately, she still has her issues that she's dealing with. There are still things that she's trying to work on. And then along comes Navy, who's like, I love everyone and everything. And of course, Lapis is like, what the fuck are you on? Like, I like that, because in a way, it showcases one very important fact. Sometimes it's okay to be a skeptic. That's something that I do like when you kind of have a show where it says it's not wrong to be where it's not wrong to be kind. Because as we saw with Rocknaldo, sometimes some people just aren't worth it. And this episode and Room for Ruby perfectly showcases that with how Navy plays the crystal gems in her long con. She acts all friendly and sweet and kind and accepting of everything, yet behind the scenes she's already planning on how to specifically betray them so that it will hurt the most. I love that, and I think what makes it better is that it's from the nice Ruby, the one who was friendly, kind, and even when she was turning against them, she was just all bashful, and so we see that behind that cheery exterior is a cold, heartless bitch. I like that. I kind of like that, and it kind of just shows how cold she kind of is, that she can happily betray them and chuck them into the ocean with a smile on her face. It's creepy. I like it. But going back to my original point with Lapis, I like that Lapis is the one, like I said, it goes back to the whole, not all people are worth it, and that sometimes it's okay to be a skeptic. It's nothing wrong with opening your heart, but you gotta have some distance, especially when the person that you are helping is someone that you have stood on the opposite side of before. Like, again, every interaction that the Crystal Gems have had with the Rubies have had the Rubies being antagonists, have had the Rubies threatening them, or hurting them, or trying to harm them, and so on and so forth. And yet, this Ruby just, and even when Steven did deal with one of the Rubies one-on-one, the only reason that Ruby dealt with him for so long was because they were stuck together, kind of had to rely on each other for survival, and then the instant that she learned that Steven was the son of Rose Quartz, she immediately turned on him and tried to kill him because she thought he was Rose Quartz. So, again, these are the sorry. So again, it just seems weird that one of the Rubies would suddenly be like, "Oh, actually, I want to be friends." So in a way, you're with Lapis on that. Even when Lapis, I think when I first saw the episode and Lapis went, "Oh, come on," when Navy said that she loved everyone, I was there with her, like, "Are you kidding me? What the hell?" Even I was starting to see how fishy it was for her to like everything. But ultimately, it did make you wonder what and ultimately, you knew she was going to betray them, but it just was a matter of when. And so when she finally wound up getting control of the ship, yep, that was her plan. She just wanted to get the ship back, and she wanted to rub their faces in it. So, in a way, I kind of like that. I do kind of like that mounting tension, and while by the end of the episode, it doesn't really feel like there's a moral to be learned, as ultimately Navy was the one. It's ultimately Navy came into their lives, they offered her an olive branch, and then she just spat in their faces. At the very least, I kind of think the finale is great. Again, if I had to give a moral, it's a similar thing to Arachnaldo. It's good to want to give someone a chance to change, but not everybody wants to, and we see that with Navy in this episode, especially with how suspicious she acts, and that sometimes it is healthy to have some doubts about someone, because ultimately maybe they'll be proven right. Again, that's just what I can infer. Either way, though, I do kind of like the finale, and I especially love Lapis's reaction when she was proven right, and that Navy was actually full of it the whole time. That was great. That was just great. As she's just again, her joy at being proven right ends up outpacing her anger at being betrayed. I love that. It's great. It's great. And on top of that, you got some good laughs with Lapis's continual frustration as Navy acclimates to Earth, and there's even one, and basically there's even one scene where when Lapis is describing sleep, Peridot just makes fun of her for apparently snoring, which I love that Lapis just immediately just scowls, and you can see a blush on her cheeks. It's funny. So overall, the episode's fine. The episode's fine. At best, I could consider it filler. But I suppose the biggest plot point that we see in this episode is that the Rubies get the ship back, because, yeah, based on what I can tell and based on what we see in later episodes, I assume that Navy went around and picked up all the Rubies that were stranded in space, and I guess that she could detect them because they were all gems, so to speak. And the ship is a roaming eye, so it probably could detect gems wherever they went. So she probably could find all the Rubies. And now the gems are down one ship, so they can't just go back out into space or whatever. So, in a matter of sense, I can kind of see why they took it away, but it also does potentially open up what will happen in later episodes. So, there you go. Overall, perfectly fine, very enjoyable. Overall, just a decent episode. So, as for Lion 4 alternate ending, this episode is part comedy, part character drama, and I genuinely like it. It's the last episode in the series that uses the Lion title, and I kind of think it's fine because, well, the Lion saga, so to speak, is just kind of been... Oh, yeah, Steven even went back to Rose's Batcave. I forgot about that. But basically, the Lion saga of videos typically kind of go on an arc. It's not just Steven growing closer to Lion that's the central focus, but Steven learning more about his heritage, so to speak. And we've seen that kind of progress throughout the episode. First, Steven encounters Lion, who is clearly extra normal in some way, and even has this sword, which immediately not only gives Steven a new pet, but also gives him another magical angle to explore. Then in the second episode, Lion brings Steven to Rose's Batcave, where he learns more about that, and which also helps in that episode because it helps strengthen Steven and Connie's relationship, as Connie compares herself to Steven, and Steven talks about how much he wants her to be in his life. life, despite the fact that she feels out of place in it. And then Lion 3 was, honestly, it was just kind of heart-wrenching as Lion was able to get Steven into the hammer space that is his main to find the video that that Rose left for Steven. Well, as such, this episode, I think, is a nice little epilogue to the whole tale, as we see Steven just desperately looking for some grand purpose that he's supposed to have, which, again, feeds back into how Steven typically... It feeds back into Steven's doubts. As Steven has talked about before, well, being the son of Rose Quartz kind of has its own problems. Not just that it doesn't just come with... It's not just gems mistake you for your mom and want to kill you, but because your mom was this great warrior that everyone looked up to and was inspired by, that kind of puts some pressure on you when you know that it's your birth that led to her disappearing, and that ultimately people are going to be looking to you for guidance in some regards because you have her gem. So you see Steven just desperately trying to find some purpose. That basically he thought that whatever he existed for was a part of some big Machiavellian plan that Rose set up that involved Steven, and that he had to fulfill some great magical destiny that required him to do something big and extravagant and amazing. And by the end, he learns that his destiny is just to be himself, which honestly I think is sweet. What I like in the episode is that Steven is essentially what drives the conflict of the episode isn't that Steven has a grand destiny, but that Steven thinks he has a grand destiny. Basically, from the outset, Steven is making a mountain out of a molehill. He's looking for hidden meanings in the video that his mom left for him, because he thinks that there must be something hidden in it. This was Rose's only means of communicating with Steven before she gave birth to him. So maybe she must have left some deeper clues hidden within there, but ultimately all the video is just Rose saying that she loves Steven, and that ultimately she wants him that he's going to be a human being, so which she thinks is extraordinary. And basically, throughout Steven's journey, what we kind of see is that what Lion kind of helps Steven accomplish isn't to discover his grand destiny, it's to help ease Steven's fears. Because by the end of the episode, when Steven finds the video for Nora, so to speak, which I guess in some alternate universe, there is a girl named Nora universe who found this video for Steven and is wondering, who the hell is Steven? Basically, it comes down to but the little added context that video gives Steven, because there was extra stuff on the video of Rose talking about how she can't wait to see what kind of person her kid would be, and all the people that her kid would be interacting with, and how lucky they were to meet the kid. Basically, it's just Rose excited because she has no idea who her child is going to be, but at the end of the day, that child will still be someone unique, will be someone different, will be living their own life, and like I said, while the names are different, it's clearly Steven that she's talking to in the video. The message, you can still feel the heartfelt message, and what I like is that with that added bit of context, it takes a weight off of Steven's shoulders, because throughout the whole episode, Steven just kept thinking to himself, do I have some big grand purpose? And while I have talked about in previous episodes how Rose how Rose only had Steven because she just wanted him to be his own person, well, again, Steven did not have, and yeah, we've even talked about how Rose didn't want Steven to deal with her baggage. Basically, when it comes down to it, Steven still has Rose's shadow cast over him. But ultimately, what makes this episode better, in a way, it's like Steven steps out from that shadow, at least a little bit, as he realizes that his mom doesn't want him to fulfill some grand mystical purpose. She never wanted him to do that. If she did, then that purpose would have been all his own. She wouldn't have pushed him to it. It would have just been Steven's choice. And that's what Steven finally realized in the episode, that by just being himself, by doing his own thing, by discovering who he is, he's doing exactly what Rose wanted. He's just living his life. And the instant that Steven realizes that that's what Rose wanted Steven to be, just himself, no grand magical purpose whatsoever, it makes him happy. because immediately, because it meant, again, like I said, in the final scene, you can see a weight has been taken off his shoulders, knowing that there's not some big grand conspiracy going on. It just makes him smile. It just makes him smile. You see him crying tears of joy, realizing that that ultimately all he was supposed to be was Rose's kid, and well, he's doing that. He's living it every day. He's doing his own thing every day, and and again, it's clear that if Rose could see the person that Steven was today, she'd be proud, which I like that. Mind you, the episode has one glaring plot hole. I mentioned before how the Nora video was prepared in case Steven was born a girl. So, how to get out to the desert? Yeah, as Greg said, Garnet, because the choices were so ambiguous, there was a chance that, since the choices were so ambiguous for who Steven would be, to the point where even Garnet couldn't see it with her future vision, well, the question is raised. Who put the video in the garbage pile? Now, you could make the argument that maybe Lion did, but there's still one problem. That would require that they knew Steven was gonna be a boy. How? My first thought was that they used an ultrasound. Honestly, I think that's what happened, because literally any explanation does not make sense. Oh, they could have used Garnet's future vision. Well, they already said that because the possibilities were so endless with Steven that they didn't know what his gender was going to be. I guess that makes sense. Of course, then how would they know that was what's going to happen? Well, basically, it doesn't make any sense. So the only logical explanations I can think of are one of two. Either they had an ultrasound, or Rose prepared both videos, and then one was thrown away. But the problem also lies in that if that was the case, then how did the Nora video end up in the garbage pile in the desert? Because the Steven video was found in Lion's Mane, which, as we've established, only Steven can enter the Mane because he has Rose's gem. If anybody else is able to enter into the Mane, they have to be holding Steven's hand, and he has to bring them in with him. So, likewise, how the hell did the Nora video end up in the garbage pile in the desert? We don't know. It's just there. Which again brings me to that the only explanation I can think of to fill this plot hole is that Rose and Greg got an ultrasound, because that's literally the only explanation I can think of. In Steven Universe Future we learned that gems because their forms are made of hard light, they don't actually have bodies, so ultimately the only thing that would have appeared in the ultrasound is Rose's gem. But they would have still seen Steven. He's physical, he's meaty and squishy and fleshy, so they would have seen him. So likewise, they should have been able to. So I guess they could have seen that he was Steven. Which I've heard rumors that it was confirmed by the staff that Rose did not get an ultrasound. But again, how the hell did she know that she was going to have a boy then? Because she clearly had to know she was going to have a boy to leave the video for Steven in Lion's Mane. And then likewise, because of that, she would throw the other video away. And before you say, well, Lion clearly took it out there, what? Did she put the video in Lion's Mane as she was giving birth to Steven? As Steven was coming out and she was giving her form, she just stuffed the video in, told Lion to get out of there, and then that was it? I guess maybe, because if she didn't get an ultrasound, then because that had to be some precise timing, which I'm still doubtful of that one, because why wouldn't she have had Steven surrounded by her friends and family, like the Crystal Gems or Greg? I think Rose would have, especially if this was literally the last time any of them were going to be seeing her alive. So I'm going to call some bullshit on that. That's a gaping wide plot hole in the episode. There's really no explanation for how the Nora video got out to the garbage pile, or why it wasn't in Lion's Mane with the Steven video. So the only explanation I can think of, Rose got an ultrasound. Even if the production staff says it's true, I think that Rose just got an ultrasound. So Make of that what you will. Otherwise, though, Line 4 alternate ending is still a very touching and nice episode. Has some great comedy with Steven as he keeps trying to figure out where the key goes and how he tries reading too deep into all these messages his mom left him, even though ultimately all she has to say to him is, I'm happy you exist, and I'm happy to have you, but again, the ending of the episode is very touching, very sweet, and ultimately showed that the only expectation Rose had for Steven was that Steven just be himself, which I love. It's sweet. I think that's nice, and I think it's just that nice little added bit of context that Steven needed in order to hear from his mother to affirm not only who he is, but that he's on the right track. That he's on the right track, even if he has no idea what he's doing. So I like that. It's sweet. It's sweet, and despite the gaping plot hole in the episode, I still think the episode is still sweet and gets me right in the feels. So, yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I will hopefully see you next week. Take care.